I'm looking on my phone actually.
Yeah, I don't see any comments on
Okay,
this.
but one thing, because we're gonna do this in like 30 minutes or less, we're not gonna take too many questions during.
Right.
Oh yeah, Lindsay said yes, it's cold. So we can get through it, and if you stick around after the Facebook Live, Amy will post a couple links, and she will answer questions, as I will also, and of course follow up if we have to. But during tonight, we're going to keep it going and not stop. Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Danielle Knight. Thank you so much for being here. And next to me is Amy Mesney of Teaching Ideas for You. I love her. I've known Amy about 3 years, right?
I think 3.
Okay, we made our connection through Teachers Pay Teachers, through Facebook groups and just getting to know each other. We had some needs for like Pinterest, right? You and I were talking. And, we developed a nice friendship. We spent time last spring in Rochester at the Flock meetup, which was awesome.
Yep.
And that was a really good time. You also have a sister who's a teacher.
Yeah, and a brother.
And a brother who's a teacher. My mom's a teacher. My husband's a teacher. My sister works for Ernst & Young, so I don't know, is that she's smarter than us, or?
Yeah, I have a sister that's in fashion, and the rest of us are teachers, so we're all okay. So you can help support us.
Yes. Okay, so the reason I had Amy come on tonight is because she is really strong with writing lessons. We discuss a lot of things that have to do with test prep and writing formulas, and she's like, I have this really cool way of teaching writing during the Florida State testing. So she was telling me about it, and I'm like, that could really be for any state preparing for any test. So right now, okay, it's December, right, Aim? So like,
right.
We may think it's too early to prepare, but January is going to be here in like 3 weeks. And how much do we all hate when we get back in January that we have to start getting our writing lessons in for test prep?
Right.
So now I'm going to turn it over to you. If you want to tell us a little bit about you and bring us into what you have on your board behind you, which I love.
Right. Well, like Danielle said, I'm from a family of teachers. My grandma was a music teacher. My sister's a music teacher. My brother and I both started in elementary and have floated around a bit. We both spent time in middle school. I did online high school, middle school, and my brother's now in high school. So we've just kind of hopped around. But I like upper elementary, middle. And so that's my favorite spot to teach. I'm not a little germy kid teacher. Preschool was rough when I had kids in preschool because like those kids are the loudest kids.
Okay.
Like,
so I'm going to give a disclaimer to what you just said. So I don't want anybody to be like, oh my gosh, she's ripping on little kids. I have to say, when you are a high school teacher or a middle school teacher, when someone says to me, right, Aim, like, oh my God, you teach high school? My reaction is, I wouldn't teach anything else.
Yeah.
There's those that are meant to teach elementary and those of us for the secondary tribe. So it's, okay. So that's our disclaimer.
Yeah. And there are people, little kids are nice, but like, I don't think I'm smushy enough for little kids.
Like, I know, like if someone said, can you get my zipper? I'd be like, zip it yourself.
Or I'd be like, is it wet? Before I'm touching it. So,
but when you meet my children's teachers, I say, thank God those are his teachers. Like it's
preschool teachers are not paid enough. That's yeah. So what Danielle asked me to talk about is the Teach acronym, and I have my board behind me. In the classroom, we didn't have enough bulletin boards, so I used mine on a science fair board. So everything that I have is modular. So it's kind of like
a mobile anchor chart.
Yeah, it's like, because in Florida, everything falls off the walls because they shut the air off at the end of the day.
Oh, okay. That's an issue. Okay.
It's so hot, and when you have one bulletin board, nothing sticks. So I got tired of that, and I said, well, I want to make something that's easy. I can move it because most of our classrooms in this area are pretty small. But we had a district meeting because we adopted a writing test a few years ago that's very similar to what Colorado had, the air test. And it really completely changed what the kids were expected to do for writing. in 4, 5, 6. Because in my county, 6th grade is still middle school or still elementary. But we went from a lot of creative narrative writing to what I call like pre-AP for elementary school. So they went from having to do like a story or, making paragraphs of a fiction topic to you got to prove your evidence and get into essay writing. As you can imagine, this is like a huge jump.
Total Common Core, right.
Total Common Core. And it's a huge jump, especially if teachers if they aren't strong in the writing. And a lot of our writing teachers were really strong in fiction writing because that's what it had always been. Now, I come from a social studies background, and so this is what we did.
Everything was factual, argumentative,
exactly.
right.
So this is, and I'm very
political.
I'm very outlining, like I'm a checklist person. So like, this is right up my alley.
Totally. I was just going to say that
yeah. And that's actually one of the things my friends come to me. They're like, you're so organized. And I never thought I was until my son's been in sports and things. And I'm like, this is so not organized. Like if we this way, because I can't stand it.
Yeah, but you know the rule. You can't complain because they're going to want you to volunteer. So you just sit there and deal.
Well, you know what I do? I just buy stuff so I don't have to sit there for that long because it's just so it's when I look at things and the district, of course, like every district, they give you a suggestion, right? They say, oh, we want you to do this. So they came out with something that I based this off the Teach, but it wasn't quite kid friendly the way they put it. And so I said, I'm going to just tweak it a bit. So I can't really claim that this is my completely new idea. This is really how you would teach kids to do a pre-AP essay, just with an easy acronym. So the biggest problem that we've had is that kids are getting good at pulling out text-based evidence. They're not good at saying why they've pulled that evidence. And that really is where the problem is, because that's what their score is based off of. If they pull out evidence, they do okay, but they're not going to rock what they're doing.
Yeah, so it's like I always enjoyed, as a student, a highlighter.
Mm-hmm.
And you highlight everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you become a teacher, and you give out the highlighters, and they're highlighting evidence everywhere. And then you say to them, okay, so now why did you pick that evidence? Oh, there was a quote. Because they see quotes, or like anyway, I'm totally on the same page with you. So go ahead. Yeah, this is great.
Or they're taught they have to have so much evidence, so they just make sure to copy a bunch of stuff and stick it in the essay. But it doesn't.
Why is it there? Like, why did they pick it?
It has nothing to do with what they're doing.
Okay, so behind you, you have an acronym.
Right. So it's Teach, and T is for topic. The topic sentence.
Okay, so walk us through it. Okay,
so I have, and you can't quite see it, I made little cards, so I have them here. They're little, but this is what I have up on the board. So in my writing center, I would have this up as a reminder for kids, because we have opinion essays and we have informational essays, and they're just a little different. So your topic sentence, what kids have to do is they have to look at what the prompt is, and they either have to give their claim that they're going to prove, or they have to give the main idea of what they're going to write about. So that can be tricky for kids. So you start with Teach, but I usually tell my kids, start with that, but you can always come back. Once you've found your evidence, you can also go back and revise your topic. Like if you found that quite go the way you thought it would. I mean, we've all done that, where we thought we felt one way, and then by the time we reasoned through it, we realized, well, maybe that isn't what I meant. So I always teach kids to go back and revisit. So if you have a kid that gets stuck on the topic, because they do, like I've had a lot of kids, even in middle school, where they get that anxiety about writing and they can't start because they don't know the topic.
Oh yeah, true. Mm-hmm.
So then just skip to evidence. So if you have this issue, what you would have is a prompt, right? So one year, our 5th grade test was Robin Hood. Was he myth or was he real?
Right.
They had multiple passages. Some were one way and some were the other, and they had to make up their opinion and then prove their opinion using evidence from these texts. So that's where the evidence comes in. Okay, so on the writing test, they will get a packet. And so what I have is I have packets. So when we do it in class, we read first, right? So like I'll have them do the topics and then we'll talk about the writing prompt. That's when I'm practicing, because I don't want them to focus on what they're going to write when we're practicing how to read the essay.
Good point.
Okay.
That's a whole nother skill, right?
Yeah. So we would read first. So like we might take a week to practice one test. So Monday, Tuesday, we might read one essay and talk about it. Wednesday, Thursday, we might read the next one and talk about it. And then Friday, we would start the essay and work on the essay. So it depends. Like I have a friend who's using this right now, and she's just doing one paragraph a day.
Interesting.
So Monday they do T, and she checks it and makes sure they've got it. Then she moves on to E. And her reasoning is, and it's working really well for her, is that there's no point to them writing 5 paragraphs if they've screwed up on the first paragraph.
I love this, by the way.
So it's just another way. And I think if I were still in the classroom, I would probably try that.
So I don't know if anybody in the audience tonight is having like a light bulb moment, but I'm reflecting on my own writing lessons, teaching with a writing formula, and I'm pretty sure I've been trying to jam in the reading and the writing all in one class period.
It's
Okay.
too much.
Too much.
Well, I was talking with a friend today too, and she said, well, you know, my kids really struggle with writing. I don't know that they could do this. And I said, but the problem is you're trying to start them off with the whole thing. It's like chunks. You don't throw a chapter book at a kid and expect them to start with that. You start them with the alphabet. Then you move them on to sight words. Then you move them on to sentences. Then you move on to paragraphs. Writing should be the same thing.
Okay. You're right. No, you're right. So let's go to A.
All right. So once you have your evidence would be, you know, if I've decided Robin Hood is real, then I'm going to go to one of those essays that gave facts about why people think he's real, and I'm going to pick one of my evidence, right?
Right.
What the A is, it's your analysis. And the way I explained it to kids is your analysis is proving why this fact is important. Like, what does your evidence tell me? Why did you pick it? Because otherwise you've just listed a whole bunch of facts and I really don't know what you know, or if you actually picked that on purpose or it was just a big mistake.
So like, how does the evidence support your topic or claim? Like, this is where you're going to convince the reader. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, you know, when you think if you were trying to convince like the mayor to, I don't know, have an extra recess, right? You would have to not just have one extra recess, you know, and you might say, well, studies show it's great to have extra recess, but that's not going to be enough to convince him. And so this is how I put it to the kids. You need to sell it. So once you give me that fact, that's not enough. Like I usually use that with them. I'm like, I'm not sold. You know, I wouldn't buy your cookies yet at this point. Like, you haven't convinced me that this is important. So when you think of the A, what you're trying to get them to is, in an opinion paper, it would be, how does this support my opinion? Whereas in an explanatory, it's, how does this prove my claim, my topic?
So it's, okay, I have the elaboration of evidence.
Exactly.
Okay.
So an example might be, okay, like I wrote one here. Like the essay that I start with, especially 4th grade, is I start with, which makes a better pet, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Well, no, not dogs, cats. So the problem is, and this is why it's really good if you're teaching like 4th grade or a 5th grade group that isn't really good with this, everybody has an opinion on cats or dogs. Everybody.
Okay, so that's a good one. Okay.
So what these kids will do is they'll start off with, well, of course dogs are the best because I've had a dog and my mom had a dog and I love dogs and they're so furry. But there's no evidence. And so this is where you can say, okay, where's your evidence? No. Did any of this come from the text? No. And it starts to click with them like, oh, okay.
Okay, so use an example that all the children can relate to. Cats and dogs is a great one. Okay.
Yeah, when you're starting. So, I mean, in this, I have those essays, but I mean, you can find things on Newsella or Time for Kids. I mean, you do have to work for things that go together, but it is possible. Or
okay, so you and I are going to talk at the end where people can find text resources.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's analysis. Okay, let's talk about the C.
The C is your conclusion, and concluding sentence. For me, concluding sentence is always hard. And I know working with my son, like he's had trouble with it too, because he'll say, well, but wasn't this the topic? And it's like, well, it is the topic, but you have to restate it.
So yeah, every teacher I had my whole life always said, well, you take the topic sentence and you flip it. I'm like, I just always remember that statement. So it's a little more than that, but okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, and so, I mean, in the end, I don't get too worried if they really, all they can do is go back up to the topic and reword the conclusion, because what I'm worried about is, do they have the evidence? Do they have the analysis? And does it match their topic? Because that's where they're going to get scored. At least in Florida, that's the main score. I mean, will they lose points if their conclusion isn't fancy? I mean, a little bit, but not enough that I'm going to spend gobs of class time on that. It's not worth it. That sounds terrible, doesn't it, that we're just worried about the test? But, you know, you have to focus on the meat. The conclusion will come as they become better writers.
You know, I know I mentioned January early during the Facebook Live, but really, like when I was, you know, when I had grade 9s and grade 11s, really September I started the whole evidence, the text, you know, even like I remember like Romeo and Juliet, they had to find evidence. Like every text I would pull was what we were reading at the time. And you know, those of you that are in an English classroom, you know it's hard to get in your nonfiction because you have so many novels and stuff during the year. So it wasn't in January, it was really the whole year. Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, and I think you're right, because what happens is, because people wait so late, then you're doing the crush. You know, we got to pump this essay out in one day. And like we talked about earlier, especially younger kids are going to do better if you break it into chunks.
You know, Lindsay said, yeah, she started in October. Do you also think that when you start like 3 weeks before the test, they know it's for the test? And it's like they turn into like haters, you know, like the Teach thing again. You know, it's like I use race. I remember like, oh, that race thing, race core. Oh, here she goes again. But if you do it from the beginning, they don't even realize it.
And I see that somebody asked me what county. I'm in Brevard, and you know, Brevard's always done really well. We're a good county. But I have found that writing is it's just getting pushed by the wayside at this point, because now there's so much pressure to do the math and the reading that I'm hearing from my friends who are still in the school system that there's less and less time. And this is where you have to integrate. You really have to integrate everything in order to make it work, you know?
Okay, so let's talk about the H, which I think is super special.
Let's review. So you spend a day talking about topic if you're going to do a paragraph a week or a paragraph a day. Then you're going to get into evidence and analysis. You're going to probably spend your most time on that. You'll do conclusion. I would do it in a day. And then H is what I call high five. Now, it is a little bit like, what do you mean by high five? But all kids know what high five is, right? High five. And so what the district has had originally was some long like paragraph over all the things the kids should check back when they're done with their essay. And I said, you can't remember that. Even I can't remember that. Oh, there's Mr. Mesney, who's going to wave hi. So,
and I'm sure you're not happy he just walked through, but we deal with that, right?
Right.
We all know my kids make an appearance.
So we have, I broke it down into the basics. They should check capital letters, punctuation, make sure their verbs are in the right tense. They check their spelling and check that it's readable. Is it neat? And I was telling Danielle earlier, on our state test, these actually are worth almost nothing. So a lot of teachers have just said, we don't care if you spell it wrong because it doesn't matter. But I still feel like we need to teach kids it does matter. But at the same time, if they check 3 of the things because they can remember there's 5 things and I remember 3, then at least they got 3.
Okay, so Florida is still a written test.
Mm-hmm.
New Jersey uses the PARC test, so that is published writing. They're using the computer. But I would still use this for a computer-based test.
Yeah,
They're still checking
exactly.
for the grammar, the capital. You know, they still check them, and there's points associated with that.
Well,
If anybody in the audience knows exactly what the percentage is, I would love to hear it. But I would say the teach method would be great for handwritten and computer-based.
Well, and what I mean as far as if they remember 3, you have those kids who get the test and already the anxiety sets in and they forget. So my thought with high 5 is they can remember 5. They can remember high 5 so they know there's 5 things. You know, I know when I have a list, I always go to Target and I come home without the one thing I'm supposed to get, right?
And a million other things.
You get there, yeah, and $100 of other stuff. Thought was for those kids who have anxiety, if they know there's 5 and they can remember 3, that's better than they remembered nothing, you know, because you want them to learn how to make a final paper. You know, it should be something publishable. In reality, we all know kids choke. We know kids have to have something to fall back on, especially 4th, 5th grade. I mean, these kids are really still babies. 3rd grade, some of them, you know, are still working on a paragraph.
Right.
4th grade, some of them are still working on a paragraph. So, you know, and I know all of us are dealing with kids who are ESOL, ELL, ESOL,
Yes.
you know, kids with disabilities. These things are hard, you know. So the more that we can give them as a crutch, or not really a crutch, but as a memory aid, the better for them.
So I love what you have behind you. And I'm not just saying that because we're in a Facebook Live. Like I would totally display that in a classroom. So on your blog, you have a blog post that supports what we're talking about tonight. And you're going to put that link in the comments along with a freebie to get people started. So tell us about that.
So the blog post does go through the Teach, and it gives you a little bit more like of some of the examples that I use with my kids and things like that. And at the end, I have an outline freebie. And I think when I look at Teach, it's really outlining. If you really want to break it down, what are you doing? You know, number 1, my topic. You know, number 2, my first paragraph. Number 3, because eventually you're going to get kids where it's not just TEACH, it's TEAEAEAEA. You know, they have to learn that they can't just put one thing there. And so I made an outline, pack it up, because that's what you're trying to get kids to visualize.
Okay, and I think it's also awesome too that I feel like this was created for a teacher. Like for me personally, okay, so like grading writing was always a challenge for me. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
So this kind of formula would be great for me as I'm grading because I would look for the items in Teach, right?
Exactly. And I will say, like my friend said, it's really helped her to grade one thing at a time, because you catch those kids who haven't got it. You know, why are you moving a kid on to evidence if they haven't figured out how to write a topic sentence yet? You know, so she's been better able to do all those small groups that they want you to do. I don't know about middle school, but elementary, it's all about the small group. So you're better able to effectively teach your kids.
Okay, so would you do a writing folder?
I think I've tried different things, and I have found you have to find your own style.
No, like what I mean is like, let's say on Monday you're going to do your reading, right? And Tuesday, maybe the second text, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the folder, you would put those items, right?
What I did, now, okay, everybody don't laugh, but like, I have to keep things organized. Like I lose my mind, right? And even like with this, what I'm going to tell you, I had kids who lose their stuff, but we glue everything into our notebooks, like everything.
Oh, nice. Okay, so no writing folder, but it goes into the composition book.
I don't use a composition book because I'm too cheap. I use a spiral because they're like 15 cents. And so what I would do with kids is we would fold them in half, because if you have a spiral notebook, if you fold it in half, it fits. Now, you can actually fold it so that the title still shows, and we just glue the top half to the side so it doesn't go anywhere.
Nice.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally picturing it. That's cool.
And so what I do is like, okay, page 1, we glue this thing in. Page 2, we put that thing in, because I don't want stuff everywhere.
Okay. All right. So we're headed towards like 8 o'clock.
Okay.
So just want to wrap it up. You will be available to answer questions. You're going to put the link in the comments for people to get their freebie download. And I just want to hold up our interactive fan that you and I created to support this. So it's here, and it goes just like this. So this can actually also go in a notebook. You would anchor it on the back to your page, or you could put it in a pocket folder or in a writing folder. And it opens up to spell teach. Here, wait. And for like, here's an example. For like T for the topic page, fan page, you would have all your pointers to remember and sentence starters, which are awesome. So it would give students, because I always would get stuck with sentence starters, right? So let's say for evidence, how am I going to introduce this evidence? For example, the text describes, the author explains, for instance. So that's awesome. I think I would hold on to this. Children with that require some visual reinforcement, and this is cool because Amy was doing this before, with her hand for the high five on the H page. I don't know if you could see that. I put a hand, and then each finger has the points for the high five. So a child can refer to this during practice time in class. Okay, so thank you everybody so much. So this resource too, if you want to grab it on Teachers Pay Teachers, the link is actually in the Facebook Live description, and we discounted it. It for tonight, and I'm going to leave it as a cheapie all day tomorrow, and then we'll put it back to full price. So if you want to go ahead and grab that, it will support your students. And we love everybody for tuning in tonight. Thank you so much. Amy, any last thoughts?
Any questions you might have about how I use it, just go ahead and pop them in the comments, and I'll be sure to go through.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thank you. Amy, thank you. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.